Thank you. Sorry. There we go. People are joining us. We have the one now. Thank you for those tuning in. We'll get started in just a second.
I think I'm going to email the link to Christina.
Okay, I think I just emailed it to her as well, but if you'd like to send it to her too, please do. Hi, for those tuning in, start in just a second. We'll do our introductions and then we'll start the Q&A for our international relations major panel. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and get started, and then as people join, they can kind of tune in and ask their own questions as well. My name is Caroline Ward. I am an assistant dean with the Office of Undergraduate Admission at William & Mary. So happy to be talking to you all today and being able to learn more about the joint degree program, especially for international relations majors. But I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Samantha to introduce herself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Samantha. I go by Sam. I'm a senior. I'm currently at William & Mary in Virginia. I did the ABAB track. So I started at St. Andrews and I did my junior year at St. Andrews and sophomore and senior year. Yeah. Is there any other info we should share?
That's good. And we'll move on to our next panelist, and then we'll start the Q&A and really dig deep into the experience. Sky, would you like to go next?
Sorry, yeah, I wasn't sure of the order. I'm Sky. I'm currently a senior at William & Mary. I did the ABBA track. So I did my first year at William & Mary and then my second and third year at St. Andrews. And now I'm going to be, finishing up at William & Mary this semester. Yeah, and I'm Christina. I'm also an IR major, and I, like Sky, did the ABBA. So I spent my second and third year at St. Andrews, and I am at William and Mary for my last year.
Perfect. Thank you all so much. And for those tuning in, we'll go ahead and start our Q&A. So please feel free to drop your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And it looks like we already have questions coming in. That's fantastic. So our first question is, how do you decide which track to do in regards to ABBA or ABAB? So can you all share your experiences choosing that track?
I can start. I'm not gonna lie, for me, one of the most important factors were my friends were going, because I think our cohort was really close and you make some really good friends. And so for me, in my decision-making process, it was really important that I got to stay with my friends. But another consideration that we had was housing. So we thought it would be easier to kind of find off-campus housing, like a flat or something in St. Andrews, if we were there 2 years in a row, than it would be to try to find housing at the opposite location when you're like switching across. So those are the two things that really influenced my decision to do the sandwich, as we call it, ABBA.
Yeah, mine was a little different. I actually didn't apply to William & Mary. I just applied to St. Andrews and then the program. So I was always going to start at St. Andrews, but I decided to finish at St. Andrews and do ABAB because a lot of it was career-based for me. I wanted to work in the US after college. So it's good to, end in William & Mary, which is really close to DC. A lot of IR students end up in DC, I feel like. And then also because I really like the senior academics of William & Mary, you get to do like an honors thesis, you can do independent study, whereas if you're at St. Andrews, you have to do a dissertation if you're single honors. So that was my criteria.
Yeah, just to, go off of that, I would say the reason I think that I heard most frequently was depending on whether you'd like to write a thesis or do an independent study at William & Mary or St. Andrews, whatever track that you'd like, that's usually the one people go for.
I think even outside of just the college experience itself, I'd say it's pretty hard to transition between the two. And so I'd say it made it a little bit smoother to stay in one place, at least for me, to do my second and third years in the same place. Made things like finding housing, knowing people a little bit smoother. But I don't think you're going to lose anything particularly huge by choosing to do either the sandwich or not.
Thank you. And then another question we have is, how was the transition back to William Mary from St. Andrews in your last year?
I'm happy to start. Or I would say it's hard for like my year a little bit to judge on that, just because we had such an abrupt ending, leaving St. Andrews during the pandemic. And so it definitely was not a normal experience. I would say it was actually has been a lot smoother than I was anticipating. And it was really nice to come back to community of people that I was still friends with and felt like I could pick up where I left off.
Yeah, I think Sky said it perfectly in that we're probably not the most representative sample, but I do agree that it was a lot scarier of an issue in my head than when it actually happened. Especially because like the friends I made freshman year, like I had kept in contact with, and then it was just so good seeing them again, and it was really easy to catch back up and everything. I think for me, the thing I missed most or like was most nervous about, funnily enough, was just like the weather. Williamsburg is a lot warmer than St. Andrews, and I had stocked up on all these cute winter coats and like just heavy clothes. And so to come back and not be able to wear them as often was probably the biggest difference.
Yeah, I was ABAB, so I don't, but I can speak to the next question, which is about unexpected challenges. I think that someone already mentioned this, but one of the unexpected challenges is definitely housing because you're sometimes like on the opposite side of an ocean of where you want to be living next year. It's hard to like tour, get your name in the door, stuff like that. So it really helps to like build relationships with people in the community. So you have people who can like maybe do that for you, like go on a house tour for you, and they can like FaceTime you in or something. Um, and then the other one is that it's kind of tricky after like spending a year at one college for me, in my experience, to adjust academically to the other school and like the different grading styles. So I would say just like be aware that like not all the criteria is going to be the same and take the time to like relearn how to do well academically at the next school. Don't assume it's all going to be consistent.
Yeah, I can agree with Samantha on that one too. Oh, sorry, Caroline, I didn't mean to interrupt.
No. I was just going to repeat that question of the question posed was, what are some unexpected challenges you had during this program and how did you overcome them? So thank you for sharing, Sam, and then go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to unmute.
No, it's okay. I was going to just agree with Sam. I think the transition to St. Andrews the first time around was unexpectedly difficult in that the academic expectations were completely different from William Mary, and you just have different a different rhythm of the semester. Really, you have different expectations for your assignments, different type of work, and so I think that was something that really tripped me up. But once I overcame, I definitely found that just adapting and learning how to plan ahead made me a stronger student, but also a stronger person because I learned how to manage my time really well.
Yeah, I don't really have much to add. I guess if there are like specific questions about like academic differences, but I do think like socially it was fairly easy to transition, but it was just the academics, just because there are different expectations for what undergraduates should be doing on both sides. But that being said, everyone here is an IR major, right? Yeah. So I would definitely say that as an IR student, I could not imagine taking like this course without having both the American and like British European perspectives, because the types of theories and things you learn on both sides are so different, yet they fit together so well. I think this program does a really good job in exposing you to that at an early stage. So even though it's hard to adjust as an IR major, I think it's so important.
And we have a great next question. How do you feel like the Wamsa program differs from the typical W&M experience? And going along with that, do you feel it's given you more opportunities than the average college student?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I'm coming at this from like sort of a different angle because William and Mary is my second school, but I really feel like being in the Wamsa program added to my experience here at William and Mary, both because professors are really aware of what the program is here, which is kind of different than in St. Andrews, where sometimes they're not as well informed about like what the program is and what you do, but they're very accommodating. I found like sort of helping you adjust to the new academics. And there's so many great opportunities here at William and Mary that you don't necessarily like wouldn't be aware of without the program. So like, for example, I wasn't aware of the Global Research Institute, the GRI, but one of my professors like sort of helps run it. So I was able to learn about that, and like you can do really cool research with them. So I think being in the program like exposes you to a lot of stuff at school that I wouldn't have been aware of otherwise.
Yeah, kind of adding to what Sam said, I think like in its most simple form, when you're in the program, you're fully a student at both William and Mary and St. Andrews, which I'm sure you guys have like heard in like the little brochures and stuff. But because of that, you have access to all of the resources and experiences and clubs and things at both universities. And so as far as comparing it to a typical William and Mary experience, you also get to be a typical St. Andrews student, which is really cool. So yeah.
And can you share what types of jobs or field of work that IR majors within the Jdp program pursue? So if you know anybody that's graduated and what they're pursuing, and then what are you all interested in pursuing after graduation?
Yeah, so I guess I'll start. I mean, there are students who get like jobs right away after graduating. I wasn't quite that brave, but I did get into Georgetown for their IR master's program. And so I'm super excited to be starting there in the fall. Thank you. And I think that the program definitely played a really big role in kind of helping me strengthen my application for that. Um, Kind of like I mentioned earlier, there are a lot of like IR theories and stuff, and that's really important to engage with as a postgraduate. And so having that foundation just helped me be sure I knew what I wanted, and I think prepared me to like create a good application in order to continue learning, which is what I wanted to do. So yeah, that is one route you guys can take if you're interested.
Yeah, I can speak a little bit to like going into the job market after. If you decide to like pursue grad school later down the line or not at all, there's lots of opportunities to sort of get your foot in the door at both schools. A lot of IR students, and this is just based on what I know from my friends, will go into like government or nonprofit work, or somewhere in between, like with a lobby group or consulting firm or something like that. Also lots of journalism. I feel like people come out of William and Mary. So there's really a lot of directions you can take IR. I think that's why I ended up choosing it, because it's so interdisciplinary that you can really take it whatever direction you're most interested in. And I mean, like if you guys are interested, I have lots of friends who like have ended up getting really cool jobs. So if that's like a concern of yours, I'm always happy to talk about that more.
Yeah, and just to speak to that experience, I'd say like I know a lot of my friends have gone into consulting, and that was definitely a career path that I was interested in pursuing. I'm doing a little bit of an unusual track because I'm actually starting to in a position with an accounting firm, and I'd say ultimately international relations, it's a very broad field, but it also gives you a lot of access to different industries and fields that you might not otherwise have explored. And so there's so much that you can do with an IR degree besides just be a diplomat or join the State Department. There's so many wonderful opportunities, and it will never be wasted.
Thank you. And then we've had a couple questions about internships and whether you can pursue them in the program, if you can pursue them over on the St. Andrews side, And then we also have a specific question asking if any of you have done the DC summer internship. But if you want to kind of address that overall, can you do internships overseas? And are they easy to find? And then if any of you have done the DC, kind of talking about that.
I guess I'll start with the internship question. So it is, at least in my experience, there are a lot of internship opportunities that you can do regardless of where you are. I think, so just as an example, the summer between my first and second year, so right before I went to St. Andrews, I got an internship to study as like a research fellow in Seoul, South Korea, working on like things with like North Korea and like peace initiatives and stuff, which was really cool to do at that young of an age. But yeah, just to say that like there are a lot of opportunities and your professors on both sides can really help you. Another thing beyond just like internships that you like apply for while you're wherever are that professors on both sides are very open to like taking on research assistants of their own. So that's something I was very easily able to do at both schools. And I did that just by like emailing a professor. It was super awkward at first. Actually, I did this in St. Andrews and she wasn't a professor I had like for class, but I saw that her research interests aligned with mine. So I emailed her and I was like, hi, like what you do is super interesting. Like I would love to meet you. And like, if you have any like research positions open, like I'd love to help you with something. And it ended up great. She wrote my recommendations for grad school and she is a wonderful woman. But just to say that it is very easy to do. In my experience on both sides, professors are very eager to help, and as long as you're looking for them, I think you will find the opportunities that fit you. Obviously, if you like aren't interested in doing anything, then it might look like there isn't much to do, but if you look, they are there.
Yeah, and I can speak to that on the St. Andrews side as well. Is I actually ended up getting an internship in London from St. Andrews, and I actually wasn't expecting to go into the industry or the field or look at any of the firms or locations that I was looking at. And because of the people and the experiences that I had at St. Andrews, I ended up exploring that field. And so I think actually the program in a way opens up more doors than if you stick to one school or the other, because you have the opportunity to meet more people, you have the opportunity to explore just like different ways of learning, and you have access to two really great career centers that are going to help you in applying to each side of the ocean if that's where you're looking.
Yeah, I can also hop in quickly. I was also super lucky and I had the opportunity to be a teaching assistant in China after my first year. So after I was done with my first year at St. Andrews and before I went to William & Mary for the first time. And it was at an academic camp and it was split between Beijing and Shanghai and it was a couple months long. It was a super awesome experience. I'd never been to Asia before. It was really cool. And fun fact, the program that I interned in is co-founded by a graduate of this program, the Wamsa program. So yeah, it's really cool. So I think like because it's such a small program, there's a lot of like wanting to pay it forward within the program. So like people I've talked to within the program are so willing to give advice and help out. So yeah, if you're looking for international experiences, this is a really good one.
Great. And then we've had a couple questions asking what classes are like at St. Andrews, especially in comparison to William & Mary. So some people have asked, I've heard there are like 2 or 3 classes at St. Andrews, whereas you would take 4 or 5 at William & Mary. And can you all share what that curriculum is like, mainly for your first 2 years, that first year at William & Mary or St. Andrews for Sam, and then, switching it around?
Yeah, so I think the biggest difference as far as class structure that I've observed in my experience so far has been at William & Mary. It's a bit more hands-on. So you have a lot more class time or contact hours, as they call it over there. And you have not a lot more assignments, but you have more assignments spread out throughout the semester that are like worth a smaller percentage of your grade. Whereas at St. Andrews, most of my classes, I had one essay and then a final at the end of the year, and that was my entire grade for the course. And I think, yeah, I saw the comment where someone asked like, oh, is it true you only go to class like twice a week? And that's more true when you're like a junior or senior. When you're an underclassman, you do go to class more frequently, but I would say that St. Andrews emphasizes independent learning a bit more. And so you might have like free time where you aren't in class, but that's because they have assigned like 20 readings for you to do that you need to have done in order to participate in your discussion when you actually do go to class. So yeah, I'd say the trade-off is like, whereas at William and Mary, a lot of your learning is done in the classroom, at St. Andrews, there is a higher expectation of like independent learning.
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of that. The only thing I would add is that someone asked if you can like how the grading styles are different. Basically, St. Andrews grades you on a point scale of 20, and anything above like a 15.5 is an A. And it's definitely an adjustment. It took me a while to get used to it. It's very disheartening when you get like something low out of 20, but it can actually end up being a really good grade if you look at the conversion. And William and Mary on their website has like a little conversion table, I think, to GPA. And then in terms of like the content you're learning, I found that in my experience, St. Andrews is a lot more theory focused and William and Mary is a lot more case studies and real world application. Like we have guest lecturers who are practitioners of IR more than we do at St. Andrews, which is a lot more, I would say, like within academia. They sort of are more like insular, but both are really good experiences. And I think, you know, like I feel like we've talked about this, but the value of the program is you get exposed to both, and you can decide which is more useful. And I think in that way, the program actually helps you learn how to be better at IR than like just going to one school or the other.
Yeah, I would agree. Same on that one, especially. I think St. Andrews tends to be a bit more of a focused experience. I saw one of the questions was asking like, does having fewer assignments at St. Andrews increase stress? I definitely think it changes the stress and it's probably more concentrated on specific times during the semester. But also I would say in some ways I was less stressed because you have so much time and so much just space to really invest in what you're learning and to dive into the readings, to explore the concepts, to explore the topics, to get to know them well inside and out. And I feel like you emerge from the semester with such a good understanding of broad IR theory that when coming back to William Mary, I thought it really helped cement my just theoretical approach to what I was learning at William Mary. And that just gave me a better base for responding and thinking critically about applying that to topics and real world issues. So I'd say you maybe have more stress in that there's like fewer deadlines, but you have so much space to really invest in learning about it that you feel like you have a really good handle on what you're meant to be tested on.
Yeah, just to add something to that question that was asked about, like, does less grades equal less stress? At St. Andrews, it's really funny because a lot of the classes where you're writing essays have like a similar structure in that like your one essay is probably due like around midterm time. And so St. Andrews Library would be like empty or like fairly, you can find a seat pretty easily. But once you get like halfway through the semester on that like 1 week when everyone's assignments are due, it is like impossible to find a seat. So it's just funny because the whole campus just kind of like, it's like a rubber band. It like contracts and expands whenever assignments are due. But yeah, like Sky said, I think it just depends on your personality. If you prefer having your grade hinge on one thing, which was definitely my style, because I was like, oh, I'm only stressed about one thing, even if it's huge. Like 1 is a smaller number than like 6. But some people prefer having like cushions in between. So it just depends on you.
Thank you. And then we have a question going forward in the dorm process. Does the JDP affect rooming and roommates? So I'm happy to answer part of this, but I definitely want you all to share your own experiences. But, when you're starting at William Mary, which all of the admitted students tuning in today would begin at William Mary, you would just, go through the typical roommate request forms and first year experience, and the university would know that you wouldn't be here the next year. So then you would, of course, choose your hall at St. Andrews, but you all could share your own experiences for sure.
Yeah, so I can talk about this a little bit. I didn't start at William and Mary, but I at St. Andrews they give you priority if you're in the program, which is really nice because I got to live in Sally's, which is like a hall that's really in town, and you are like really close to things. It's a very historical hall, and I also think that the way that the JDP has affected my living is that I ended up wanting to live with people in the program. So as like I'm living with a girl who's an IR student in my year in the program now on an off-campus house at William and Mary. So the consistency is, or like the effect, I guess, is more on like who I'm living with than where I'm living, is my experience.
Thank you. And then we have a question kind of almost relating to social life, which I always feel like dorms kind of have to do with because a lot of people meet their friends in dorms. But we have a question asking, is it difficult to keep friends and your social life as you move back and forth?
I guess the short way to answer that question is kind of however much you invest, like you will get back. And so if you're good with like keeping in touch with people, like your friends aren't going to forget about you because you're gone, whether that's for 1 year or 2 years consecutively. Um, so yeah, I like Sky and I said, like we were able to come back to William and Mary after 2 years and we still had our friends waiting for us, which was really nice to know, but also just kind of proves that I guess friendships and things are more resilient than you might think when you're moving abroad for the first time.
Yeah, and oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
oh, you go ahead, Sky.
I was just going to say, like, moving forward, I think reflecting, like, obviously we're about to graduate in a few weeks. And actually, I think the program gave me a really realistic perspective on friendships and just a sense of like, it's so rare that you're going to have a time in life when all of your best friends are within 6 feet of you. And, when I was a freshman, I'm making some really good friends with people and I'm actually living with them this year, 3 years later. So it definitely is like possible and not as hard as you expect to maintain contact with people. And I think even that time away also like just trained me to really invest in those friendships and how to maintain that over distance, that moving forward I'm not afraid of losing those people, not even just at William Mary, also at St. Andrews. They're also my closest friends, so not something I would, looking back, would be as afraid as I was going into it.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. And the only thing I would add is that I had a similar experience. Like my last year I was at St. Andrews and I was in my third year and I lived with people I met in my dorm my first year at St. Andrews. So it is like you do maintain those relationships if you put the effort in. And like I have plans to visit them in London after the pandemic ends. So like it's not it's not easy. Like you have to put in the work and like stay in contact, but it's worth it. And like you can still create really close friendships. And like I consider those people some of my closest friends. So it is really daunting though, like to switch back and forth because it's not a typical college experience. But yeah, I would just echo what Sky and Christina said too.
Awesome. And then we have a question, how do the expectations within the program differ? So, between the two institutions. That might go along with the grading scale or the dissertation at the end, but any information you can provide.
I can start and just say, I will say the changing expectations was really shocking to me. It's probably one of the hardest parts of my second year. I'd say William and Mary, you tend to, as I said a little bit earlier, but you tend to take more classes, and each class probably have just more assignments in smaller chunks. So you have like, I know for me, I have like a few 4 to 5 page essays due this semester per class. At St. Andrews, your second year, you usually take 3 classes, and you probably, for me at least, I had two essays per class throughout the semester, and then a final exam. And so I would say like a William Mary essay, I tend to do my list of sources for a William Mary essay is probably like 7 to 8 to 10. For a St. Andrews essay, it bordered on 20 to 30. So I would say there's just a very different you're basically doing the work that you would do for a few essays at William & Mary is what you'd be putting into one essay at St. Andrews. Your time is just going to be spent differently. I wouldn't say either one is, there's a huge change in the expectation for how much time you spend working. But I would say it's just where you're placing that energy is going to be a little bit different.
Yeah, to add to that, I think another difference is that at William & Mary, which we kind of mentioned, but when you're studying IR and like writing your papers, there's a very big emphasis on like how does what you're learning, how can it be applied like in the real world? And that's why they kind of like emphasizing case studies and specific examples to make it like practical and more hands-on, I guess. Whereas at St. Andrews, and this is part of the reason why they require so many sources, is because they want to look at like the abstract concepts and theories that kind of tie together all those different case studies. And so you have to cite all these different people and famous authors in order to make sure you understand those abstract concepts. And so I think that's like a big difference between like the US and Britain when it comes to IR.
Gotcha. And then we have a question that I always love hearing from JDP students, but why did you decide to be a JDP student? You know, and how did you decide that?
Okay, I feel bad. I feel like I'm talking to you back to back, but I guess I'll start. So for me, I grew up in the military. My dad was in the military, so I was always moving around every 2 or 3 years. And so when it was time to like pick a college program that fit me, I was very much like, I don't think I could stay in one place for 4 years and not get bored. And so, yeah, that was probably my primary reason for joining the joint degree program, was that it was a lifestyle that I was kind of familiar with. And also, I just thought it made so much sense to study IR internationally. So yeah, that's why I did it.
Yeah, I had a couple of reasons. I already sort of mentioned a lot of mine. Well, I was initially planning on just going to St. Andrews for 4 years, and then I went to a little information session, which is probably very similar to this one. And it basically convinced me to do the program because you get the liberal arts aspect and you have the opportunity to make networking connections like for career opportunities in both countries instead of just isolating yourself in one part of the world, which I think is really useful. And also, a lot of my family's British, so I'm a dual citizen, so I really wanted to spend some time in the UK and sort of get to know that side of my family. So those were my two big reasons, but I would say the most important thing is that like I wanted the international experience to study IR, like Christina said, because IR as a discipline is already pretty, like a lot of the academia comes from the US, so it's good to like, you know, expand your horizons a little bit.
Yeah, I would really echo those two things. I think when I was looking at it, I was like, oh, this is different. I'll maybe look into it, and then just kind of clicked, let's do it. I would say also, I kind of what Sam was saying, I actually found like IR as a discipline at William & Mary. I think, Caroline, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I've been told that IR itself is actually like a subfield of a subgenre that's like split between politics and government and history kind of. Whereas actually at St. Andrews, it's like studied as a completely different discipline. So you have very different perspectives on how IR is interpreted and how it is viewed at the two different institutions. So just to contribute to what the others have said, having that different experience between the two has become a really holistic understanding of international relations that I think you'd miss out if you were one or the other.
That's a great way of putting it. Definitely that holistic kind of look at it. For sure, for both sides, because you're right, like IR students at William & Mary definitely get those history, the government classes, and that kind of knowledge. And then someone did ask, what would you change about the program if you could? Interesting question.
I think I'm a peer advisor here, so I talk about this a lot with like administrators in the program, but I think one of the things that the program needs to work on is creating like more community within the St. Andrews side of the program, because at William & Mary, you take a class with the program. So you meet everyone basically. So I didn't know anyone in the program my first year in St. Andrews. There was like one kid in my hall who was in the program and we met randomly, but there was never a time when we all sat down together and got to know each other. Whereas at William and Mary, they're very intentional about creating that community. So you guys would actually, if you start at William and Mary, be in a really good spot because you would meet everyone. But I think the program needs to work on creating a parallel situation for the people who start at St. Andrews, because it's really, really nice to show up to a school with like sort of a built-in community.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is although the program has like been in the process of fixing this, which has been great to see, but kind of early on there was kind of information existed, like really helpful information, but it wasn't super easily accessible or like clear where that information was. And so that was like a complaint I remember having like my first and second year. But in recent years, like the program has been addressing that and kind of compiling information or having like peer advisors distribute that information into like bite-sized pieces for the students at times when they need them. So like, for example, something that the program started doing either this or last year was that when you're a second year preparing to make your decision of whether you do AB or ABAB, whichever like path you do, they have like a special little like workshop for you to attend where they will give you all the pros and cons of each and help you make your decision. And so just the access to information can always be improved and no matter what you're doing.
Yeah, and just to like contribute to that, I'd say a lot of, I mean, the program itself is very young, so a lot of it, the administration is figuring it out as they go along, as well as people in the program. And I think the thing that I was told from the beginning is the people who know the program best are the people in the program. So I think definitely, you know, an admin has as many answers as they can have, but your contacts are, your best contacts are going to be the people who've done it themselves. So I think coming to things like this, and then when you come to William Mary, really getting plugged into the community, getting to know older people in the program, especially seniors, and asking them these questions is there, to be honest, probably going to have better answers for what the program is like than someone in administration.
That kind of ties into our next question, which is what advice do you have for students who are still deciding on doing the joint degree program? So you're mentioning of like doing these programs and hearing more about it, but do you all have other advice as well for those still deciding?
I think something really important that people should just kind of self-reflect on before making this decision is like the idea of starting, you know, like a new university chapter at a different university in the middle of your college experience might sound super exciting, but it is pretty challenging. And so just make sure you understand that like your second year will kind of be like year one again at a different school. And just, yeah, just make sure you're ready for what it actually means to like have to go to a new place, because it means you will have to like invest in new communities and like join clubs and like make a very conscious effort to make friends with people, which can be a really fun experience. And I had a really great time, but it is challenging. And so just make sure you are comfortable with that.
Yeah, my advice really echoes Christina's, but it's basically like commit to what you're gonna do. I spent probably most of my first and second year like not getting involved in stuff. I was just sort of like having fun being a college student. And then it really took me like my junior year. And then I started diving into extracurriculars and I got involved with research and I started, you know, investing more in the Wamsa community as opposed to like just my individual little groups at schools. And it really paid off. I'm really happy. I wish I had started doing that earlier. So my advice would be just like commit to your communities and like trying new things as early as possible.
Perfect. Oh, Sky, did you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I just had a quick point of like kind of echoing what everyone's saying is like make sure you know what you want out of your college experience. But also we'll say if you are like dead set on going to grad school or law school, like dead set on it, just know that going into it, the program itself is a very unique experience, and sometimes that can affect your grades in a way that you might not expect. And so just be prepared for that, because I know that has been something like what we were talking about earlier, that has been something that has affected several people. it doesn't mean that you're not going to get a good grade, but it will affect your grades because there's a clash between the systems.
And then we have a question about what about being in the JDP gets you excited? What do you love most about the JDP?
I think I really love meeting people from all over the world and knowing that we have this common experience. And like, even if I meet someone who graduated from this program in 20 years and we have like a 10-year gap between us, we're still going to connect and be like really excited to talk to each other and learn about each other's experience, just because this is such a unique opportunity. And it's very because you can also identify, you know, with the William & Mary alumni and with the St. Andrews alumni, but this is kind of like a little added bonus. So I think I'm excited about like the ways in which this allows me to relate to people like really immediately.
And then we have a question asking, how are JDP students from William & Mary received at St. Andrews? Is there like an orientation, or, you know, that class at William & Mary was mentioned where you get to meet your cohort, but, you know, what does St. Andrews kind of do to welcome those students? I know, Sam, you mentioned that they have priority over housing. Is there anything else? Do they get to, you know, schedule their classes, meet with advisors, have a special advisor within the program on the St. Andrews side?
I think St. Andrews, I think Sam mentioned this earlier, but St. Andrews tends to just take a little bit of a different approach to the program. So there's not a class, it can be a little bit more difficult to meet people in the program. But I will say St. Andrews is definitely, William & Mary is very undergraduate focused, and St. Andrews tends to have a lot more students coming from different places doing their like PhD or doing their masters that are mixing much more with the student body population. So I think you tend to find that there's so many people coming from so many places that everyone has their own unique story. So when you tell yours and say that you're coming from William & Mary, it's just another like thing that makes you unique and special when you're meeting new people, because everyone has their own really interesting story, and that diversity is something that definitely sets St. Andrews apart. So I think like I encounter people in the program very randomly in situations that were not structured. You will run across people. It's a very small town. But I would say it's probably less structured in getting to know people in the program.
Great. And then we have a question asking if any of you are involved in Greek life, and if you are, has that positively affected your experience to maintain relationships? So are any of you involved in Greek life? No? No.
Katie, who was supposed to come today, she's in a sorority, but
Okay.
she couldn't make it. Sorry to whoever asked that question.
That's okay. I can speak to it just a little bit. I mean, I've known a few people within the program that have pursued Greek life, and they certainly are a strong part of it. I think it's more on their side, kind of like they say, it's one of the many organizations they're a part of during their time at both institutions. And I think if you join a sorority at William & Mary, it's very accommodating for, you know, being part of the program, and you're going to leave and come back. But Sam, did you have something to say?
No, I was just going to say, I think Katie's a pretty good testament to what you're talking about, Caroline, because I think she's living with people in her sorority this year, I believe. I'm not sure. So definitely those relationships are maintained. And a girl who was a senior when I was a freshman was really, really close with her sorority at William & Mary, and she did a BBA because she started at William & Mary and ended at William & Mary, and she was able to live with them like in sorority court her senior year after like not seeing them for 2 years. So I would definitely say it positively affects your relationships, but it's definitely like, I think in my experience, not necessary if it's not something like, I don't think you need it if you're like worried about like using that as a mechanism to get closer to people. I wouldn't be worried about that.
And then we have a question asking if any of you have any professor or class recommendations within the IR program.
I have a lot. I am this semester TAing for a guy named Professor Tierney. He's awesome. He also runs the Global Research Institute, which has so many awesome like internship and research assistant opportunities during the year and in the summer. So I highly recommend him. He's like the only IR guy at William & Mary because everyone else is Gov or history or something. But at St. Andrews, everyone I've had honestly was really good at St. Andrews. I would say, I don't know to what extent this is available on the like course list at the beginning of the semester, but try to get non-American professors if you can, is a recommendation I have, because if you can get more international like viewpoints, it's going to be better for your learning.
Yeah, at St. Andrews, I mean, there's really great professors on both sides. I will say it's always super fun when you're reading an IR paper and you're like, man, this is a really intense topic. And you look at the bottom, it's the professor's name. That happens a lot on both sides of the ocean. I'd say I really enjoyed learning about securitization at St. Andrews, and to plug for that, Professor Faye Donnelly, I think it was called like mapping the boundaries of emerging and evolving securities. Securitization is a topic that's not covered as often in the United States. I don't know if there's anyone that specializes in it apart from Marcus Holm. So I'd say like if you can explore like theories and ideas at St. Andrews that aren't usually addressed at William & Mary, that's a really great opportunity. So like securitization, critical theory, St. Andrews covers this really well, but William & Mary has a lot of great professors that are really plugged into like Brookings Fellow Scholars, and all institutions that help inform foreign policy decisions.
Awesome. And then it looks like Christina added to the chat for everybody tuning in. Feel free to take a look at those professors. Thanks for dropping those there, Christina. They can take a screenshot. And then we have one of our last questions says, how many students who start the program finish the program? Why do they leave? Where do they go? And that's a question I can kind of answer just on the admission and administration side. So not too many people who decide to enroll in the program decide to leave. And for the most part, the cases I've come across, which are very few, these are students who start at, let's say they start at William & Mary or they start at St. Andrews and they just fall in love with it and they'd like to spend their following years at that school instead of going right back. So we've had some students who, go to St. Andrews and then they spend their second year at William & Mary and they'd like to continue their time there. Now, when that happens, they then have to apply as a transfer student. They don't just automatically get admitted to the school. They have to apply as a transfer student and vice versa. Same if a William & Mary student goes to St. Andrews and decides, well, I'd like to spend my couple remaining years just at this one school, they still have to apply as a transfer student. But again, very few cases. And one thing that's great about this joint degree program is that it's not binding when you're admitted. You're admitted, you get to learn more about it, then you decide if you want to enroll. But the people who do decide to enroll are very passionate about it. And like you all have said, they know what they're getting into. They're prepared to take on this challenging but very rewarding program. So it's just keeping all that in mind. So it's definitely super helpful. So I certainly appreciate that question. But for those tuning in, please feel free to keep dropping your questions in. We have a couple minutes left. And if you don't have any more questions, we can always, I did share my email right next to my name, so you can reach out with further questions. We have a Meet Your Major page where you can reach out to majors within all majors within the joint degree program and keep asking questions. But one question I always like to pose, it looks like we have another question coming. Good. We have any placement data that you're willing to share? We don't have placement data. We don't keep track of, where students go after exiting the program, or at least our admission office does not. So you're welcome to reach out to the director, Marcus Holmes, on this side of William & Mary, and find out if you know personal experiences with students, but I do not have that data available.
There actually has been an effort from the peer advisors to put together an alumni newsletter for the Wamsa program. I don't know what state of development that's in, but okay. I know that they've been reaching out because it's something that a lot of people want. So it's a relatable question, because yeah, I'm curious about it too. So we're working on it.
There is also a link. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead, Sky.
I was just going to say there is a LinkedIn program that features the joint degree program that's fairly new, but it will feature like alumni or people in the program and where people are headed. So I would definitely check that out.
Yeah, actually, you just echoed what I was gonna say too, that there is this new LinkedIn kind of access that students can learn more about what are people doing. And then also there is a Wamsa Student Partnership Facebook group. So feel free, once you begin the program, to join that and really get involved. I think you can also check it out just to see what Wamsas are up to. But I mean, there are so many different avenues that you can explore. Also, for those on the welcome site where you view the description of these panels, you're looking at these virtual events. So the St. Andrews site where you can register for these virtual events and learn more about them. At the bottom there's a link that takes you to a page that the University of St. Andrews has created that shares stories about current students in the program and also experiences from alumni as well. So definitely recommend checking that out. And feel free to email me if you can't find that link or that page. I'm happy to send that link to you. But it's a great website that shares a video and just quotes from alumni as well and their experiences. But it looks like our panelists also dropped their emails in the chat. So definitely make sure to write those down and reach out. It looks like we have a question. If we have additional questions or would like to speak to someone at admission or a current or former student, how would we arrange that? So kind of like what we're just saying now, if you have additional questions, please take down my email right next to my name. If you'd like to speak to a current student, definitely one of our panelists, they've dropped in the chat. Oh, it looks like they sent it to all the panelists, but I'll go ahead and copy your emails. No, that's okay. That's okay. Chat's difficult. Hold on. Okay, there's Sam's email. And then to all attendees, there's, oh, no, that's email at wm.edu, excuse me. Then Sky's email, there we go. So write those emails down, reach out. Definitely if you want to talk to someone at admission, I'd be the person because I did review all of your applications and they were fantastic. And then, and then Christina just dropped her email in, perfect. So, write those emails down. And then we have one last question. So one last question, if you all panelists could answer, it's asking, switching between schools, how did any of your anxieties about the transition prove false or true?
Good question.
What? Sorry.
Oh, okay. I would say one thing that was not valid was that I was thinking I was not gonna find anyone at William & Mary because I would be lumped in with all the freshmen and like and I would be a sophomore and I would, not really connect with anyone, which I guess for you guys would be you going to St. Andrews, but it was not true. I ended up making a lot of friends, mostly within the program because of the class and like orientation. You do your orientation here with transfers, and not if you're a freshman starting here, but if you're a sophomore coming over from St. Andrews, you do your orientation with transfer students and program students, which was a good experience. But one thing that was a little bit true was the housing is kind of stressful just going between schools. I definitely didn't want to live on campus anymore after having lived in town my third year at St. Andrews. I was like, going back to William & Mary, I don't know if I can do dorms anymore. So really like reconnecting with people in order to have them help out with that is pretty necessary if you want to get, just because the housing markets in both towns are really chaotic and stressful. But if you want any tips specifically on housing, you can also email me. But I wouldn't worry about that for a couple of years.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you to our panelists for, oh wait, Sky, did you have something to add to that? I'm sorry, I saw that you.
No, it's fine. I was just gonna say, like, I think wasn't expecting a pandemic, but basically what Samantha was saying is just like, yeah, like I think there's a lot of rumors flying around that like St. Andrews is dark and dreary and horrible, and you're never gonna make any friends, and you're gonna lose your friends to William & Mary. None of that's true. Great experience, beautiful place on both sides.
Great.
Just to add to that though, two things. First, St. Andrews has that reputation, but please get vitamin D pills, like not pills, just like vitamins. Like you need vitamins. At least I needed them because in the winter the sun does set at like 3 p.m. over there. And then just something funny to add is, St. Andrews is famous for being where Will met Kate. Well, Sky and I did see a royal during our time. He wasn't super high up, but he in like the family food chain, but we went to a ball with the Caledonian Society and we saw what was he, a descendant of like Margaret, to the Queen's sister. So that was something proven true.
Oh, how cool. That's so cool. Little story to add. Awesome. Well,
Sorry, I have
yeah.
a random fact also about the royals. I lived in the room across from the room that William lived in when he was in St. Andrews. Fun fact. Because there was like bulletproof glass on our windows and stuff like that. So I don't know. You never know.
True. You never do. That's so interesting. Fun fact. And thank you all so much for participating in this panel. We so appreciate your time and your sharing your experiences. And thank you to everybody that tuned in to listen to the panel and learn more about the joint degree program and learn more about IR specifically. But again, please email, please reach out if you have questions after today. Happy to answer those. And congratulations on everybody tuning in on your acceptance to the joint degree. But bye, everybody. I think, Sam, if you want to say, or if you click the red, it should say end meeting for all. I'm not getting that.